There is a place on this planet that no government fully controls, that no army openly patrols, and that almost nobody lives on permanently, and it may hold more raw power over the next century than any oil field, any rare earth mine, or any contested border on Earth. It sits under nearly 3 miles of ice at its thickest point, in silence, in darkness, in cold that can fall below minus 90 degrees Celsius. It is Antarctica. And what is buried beneath it is quietly becoming one of the most dangerous questions of the 21st century. For most of modern history, Antarctica has been treated as the one place humanity agreed to leave alone. A continent set aside for science, protected by a treaty, empty of flags and armies. But that image is starting to crack. Nations are building new research stations at a pace that has little to do with pure science. Icebreakers are being constructed in numbers that suggest long-term ambition rather than short-term curiosity. Survey ships are quietly mapping the seafloor around the continent, gathering data that would only matter if the rules ever changed. And the rules are, in fact, scheduled to be revisited. To understand why so many powerful countries are suddenly circling a frozen, uninhabited landmass, you have to understand what is actually underneath it, because it is not just ice down there. It is ancient air, hidden oceans, unmapped volcanoes, a buried mountain range no human has ever touched, and possibly the scar left by the asteroid that nearly ended life on Earth. On paper, Antarctica belongs to no one. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959, set the continent aside for peaceful scientific use and banned military activity there. But there is an important detail buried in the treaty's fine print. 7 countries, Argentina, Australia, Chile, France, New Zealand, Norway, and the United Kingdom had already staked territorial claims to slices of Antarctica before the treaty existed. When they signed, they did not give those claims up. They agreed to set them aside, unresolved, for as long as the treaty holds. That distinction matters enormously. A claim that has been suspended is not the same as a claim that has been abandoned. It is a claim waiting for the right moment to be reasserted. And 3 of those claims, Argentina's, Chile's, and the United Kingdom's, physically overlap on the Antarctic Peninsula, the narrow curl of land reaching towards South America. The same argument that fueled the 1982 war between Argentina and the United Kingdom over the Falkland Islands, a conflict that cost the lives of hundreds of people, was never actually resolved. It was simply parked next to an even larger, colder, and more valuable piece of unfinished business. Antarctica itself is difficult to comprehend at true scale. It is larger than Europe. It holds the overwhelming majority of the planet's fresh water, locked inside ice thick enough to bury an entire mountain range. Winds regularly exceed hurricane force. In winter, entire regions go without sunlight for months. And still, one nation after another is investing enormous sums of money to maintain a permanent foothold there. The reason becomes clearer once you understand that Antarctica was not always like this. Tens of millions of years ago, Antarctica was not a frozen wasteland. It was a green, temperate landmass with forests, rivers, and a climate that scientists compare to modern-day Patagonia or southern Chile. It did not slowly cool into its current state over an immense stretch of time. A specific geological shift triggered the change, the opening of the Drake Passage, the stretch of ocean between Antarctica and South America. Once that gap opened, it allowed a powerful, isolating ocean current to form around the continent, cutting it off from the warmer waters that had kept it alive. Within a geologically short window, the forests died, the rivers froze, and an entire ecosystem was sealed beneath ice that has not fully melted since. That accident of geology turned Antarctica into something extraordinary, a sealed vault. Everything that existed on the continent at the moment the ice closed over it, plant material, ancient soils, entire forgotten landscapes, has been preserved in place for tens of millions of years. Nothing like it exists anywhere else on the planet. The most immediately valuable thing buried under Antarctica isn't a mineral at all. It's information. Every year, snow falls across the continent and compresses under the weight of the snow above it. As it compresses, it traps tiny pockets of the atmosphere from that exact moment in time. Layer stacks on layer, year after year, for hundreds of thousands of years. The result is essentially a diary of Earth's atmosphere, written one winter at a time. Scientists extract this diary by drilling long cylinders of ice called ice cores. The deepest cores recovered so far reach back well over 1 million years, containing air that existed long before modern humans existed at all. These cores can reveal the exact concentration of carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere at almost any point across that span, ash from long-forgotten volcanic eruptions, and evidence of dramatic shifts in climate that happened with little warning. One of the most striking findings from this ice record involves a sudden cold snap that struck roughly 12,000 years ago. Ice cores show that temperatures in some regions dropped by several degrees Celsius within the space of a single decade, not gradually, but abruptly, as if the planet's climate system had briefly lurched off its rails. That single discovery reshaped how scientists think about climate stability. It proved that Earth's climate does not always change slowly. Sometimes it can shift dramatically fast. This kind of information is not just academically interesting, it is strategically priceless. Governments, insurers, energy companies, and militaries all want to know how climate systems behave under stress because that knowledge shapes decisions about where to invest, where to build, where to extract resources, and where instability is likely to strike first. Whoever has consistent physical access to this archive, and to the scientists studying it in real time, has an advantage that is very difficult to quantify, but very easy to exploit. Beneath the ice sheet lies something almost nobody expects, a hidden hydrological system of rivers and lakes, some large enough to rank among the biggest lakes on the planet, all sealed away from sunlight for what may be millions of years. Nearly 700 of these subglacial lakes have been identified beneath the Antarctic ice. In the handful that scientists have managed to sample, they have found something remarkable: life. Microbial organisms that survive without sunlight, without warmth, and without any of the resources typically considered essential for biology, instead drawing energy directly from chemical reactions in the surrounding rock and sediment. In the mid-1990s, researchers lowering a camera through a borehole drilled deep into the ice above one such lake system were stunned to see a small shrimp-like creature drift past the lens, alive and moving hundreds of kilometers from open water and any trace of sunlight. It forced scientists to rethink the boundaries of where life can actually survive. One of the largest of these hidden bodies of water, buried beneath roughly 4 kilometers of ice, has been the subject of a long and controversial drilling effort by Russian researchers, who eventually broke through to sample water that had been sealed off from the outside world for over 1 million years. The results reportedly included genetic material unlike anything cataloged in existing biological databases, though independent scientists were never given full access to verify the findings, and questions about contamination from the drilling process were never fully resolved. What could have been one of the most significant biological discoveries in modern history instead became a geopolitical standoff, with the answers kept behind closed doors. The implications reach far beyond Earth. Two of the most promising places in our solar system to search for extraterrestrial life, the icy moons Europa and Enceladus, are believed to hide vast oceans beneath frozen shells, in conditions remarkably similar to what exists beneath the Antarctic ice. Space agencies studying those moons have drawn directly on what has been learned from Antarctica's hidden lakes. In a very real sense, Antarctica has become Earth's closest working model for alien oceans, and the nations that understand it best hold a scientific advantage that stretches well beyond this planet. For years, scientists trying to model how quickly West Antarctica's ice was melting kept running into a stubborn problem. Their numbers never quite matched what satellites and field measurements were showing. The ice was disappearing faster than the models predicted, even after accounting for rising air and ocean temperatures. Something was missing from the equation. In 2017, researchers using ice-penetrating radar found the missing piece: dozens of previously unmapped volcanoes buried beneath the West Antarctic ice sheet, bringing the total count in the region to well over 100, one of the densest concentrations of volcanoes found anywhere on the planet. The entire time, the continent had been sitting on top of a massive volcanic system that nobody had fully accounted for. These volcanoes don't erupt the way surface volcanoes do. The sheer weight of the ice above suppresses the kind of explosive eruption most people picture. Instead, heat builds beneath the ice, slowly carving out chambers of meltwater and steam. One of the few volcanoes in this system that is visibly active, Mount Erebus, has maintained a continuously churning lava lake for decades, one of only a handful of such lava lakes known anywhere on Earth. Inside the ice caves this heat carves out, scientists have found mosses, algae, and genetic material that doesn't match anything in existing records, raising the possibility of microbial life that has evolved in isolation for an extraordinarily long time. There is also a more unsettling mechanical concern. As ice melts and the weight pressing down on the crust decreases, the crust can flex, and in geologically active regions that shift in pressure can make eruptions more likely. Studies of Iceland's volcanoes after its glaciers retreated found exactly this pattern. In West Antarctica, where ice loss and volcanic activity are both already underway, that feedback loop is active, largely unquantified, and capable of accelerating ice collapse far faster than current models predict. Using millions of radar measurements collected across the continent, scientists have built a detailed map of what Antarctica's bedrock actually looks like once the ice is stripped away. What it reveals is not a flat, featureless plain. It's an entire buried landscape, mountain ranges, deep canyons, ancient river valleys with their original paths still intact, and basins that haven't seen daylight in tens of millions of years. Buried under roughly 4 kilometers of ice in the interior of East Antarctica sits a mountain range with peaks reaching over 3,000 meters, a range no human has ever set foot on, and one that, by the normal rules of geological erosion, arguably shouldn't still exist at all. Nearby, a canyon plunges more than 3.5 kilometers below sea level, making it one of the deepest land canyons known on Earth. Fossilized plant material recovered from the surrounding rock confirms what this region once was, a living, forested landscape, long before the ice arrived. Perhaps the most striking discovery of all is a massive circular structure detected beneath the ice in East Antarctica, roughly the width of a small country, identified through unusual variations in the region's gravitational field. Some researchers have proposed that this formation is the scar of an ancient asteroid impact, dating to around the time of the largest mass extinction event in Earth's history, a catastrophe that wiped out the overwhelming majority of species on the planet. If that interpretation holds up, it would mean the impact that nearly ended complex life on Earth left its mark directly beneath the Antarctic ice, hidden from view for 250 million years. Closer to the coast, one of West Antarctica's largest glaciers is already collapsing from underneath as warmer ocean water erodes its base, carving out a cavity beneath the ice large enough to swallow a major city. If that glacier fully destabilizes, it alone could raise global sea levels by more than 0.5 meter. Behind it sits the rest of the West Antarctic ice sheet, holding enough frozen water to raise sea levels by several meters if it were ever lost. That single glacier functions as a kind of cork holding back a far larger, far more consequential body of ice. None of this, the ice records, the hidden lakes, the volcanoes, the buried mountains, exists in a vacuum. It exists underneath a continent that multiple nations still consider, in some legal sense, partially their own, protected by a treaty that includes a built-in expiration point. The 1991 Environmental Protocol added to the Antarctic Treaty specifically banned mining on the continent, but that ban is scheduled for mandatory review in 2048, and it can be modified if enough signatory nations agree to revisit it. That single detail turns a seemingly settled international agreement into a countdown. Antarctica is estimated to hold significant reserves of oil, natural gas, coal, and valuable metals, but the resource drawing the most serious strategic attention is rare earth elements, materials essential for electric vehicles, advanced electronics, and military technology, currently dominated by a small handful of countries. A meaningful new source of rare earths would reshape global supply chains overnight. Some nations appear to be positioning themselves accordingly. Research stations have expanded rapidly in number in recent years. Icebreaker fleets have grown in size and capability. Survey vessels have spent years quietly mapping the seafloor around the continent, gathering exactly the kind of data that would only matter if the rules governing extraction ever changed. None of this technically violates the treaty. All of it looks very much like preparation for the moment the treaty's protections come up for renegotiation. Antarctica has no permanent population, no standing government, and no military presence under the current treaty, which is precisely what makes it so combustible. It is a landmass with enormous latent value, governed by an agreement with a known expiration date, sitting at the intersection of climate science, resource competition, and unresolved territorial disputes that have already produced armed conflict once before. The ice covering Antarctica is not simply frozen water. It is an atmospheric archive stretching back over 1 million years, a hidden ocean system with its own ecosystems, a buried volcanic field larger than almost any other on Earth, a lost mountain range no one has ever climbed, and possibly the physical scar of the most devastating extinction event in the planet's history. For now, it remains sealed away, protected by paper and precedent rather than force. But paper agreements can be revisited, precedent can be challenged, and the countries paying closest attention to what lies beneath that ice are already positioning themselves for the day the rules change. The clock on that protection is already running. And when it runs out, the world may find that the quietest, coldest, emptiest place on Earth was never really empty at all. It was simply waiting.